Waking up the dead. My life is very complicated, and that for someone who strives for a simple life. The thing is that I have had an identity all my life, but have never been aware of it myself. That is not very strange, since we in the Netherlands do not recognize the shaman. In Western society, I would rather be called a psychic, but for me, this term does not fully cover my life. A shaman and a psychic both have psychic abilities, but with the shaman this goes much broader. For the shaman, it is about gaining unique experiences, in the broadest sense of the word. This also includes gaining experience with different types of drugs or diseases. In addition to being gifted, I am also aware of the existence of the afterlife and even UFOs. I am familiar with astrology and numerology, both of which form the building blocks of human behavior. In short, being a shaman goes much further than having psychic abilities. The shaman must be fully aware of reality, its functioning and its limits. In this sense, there is another very essential experience that I want to share with you. It is time to awaken the spiritual dead. 213. As you have read, I have experiences with psychic abilities and the afterlife. The topic I am going to discuss now is something entirely different and unique. I have come into contact with a very specific pattern several times in my life. I experienced this during my unstable mental period, a period that was all about discovering reality. When I started noticing the pattern, I told my father about it, but he eventually hung up the phone angrily, thinking I was crazy. Yet, there has never been a moment that I have doubted my own eyes. The pattern is special and is characteristic of the fact that it took place over various periods. There have been at least 3 times when this pattern occurred. The characteristic is that it always concerns things that you normally never see or experience, but then 3 times in a row in just an hour or less. As I went through these experiences, I quickly began to understand the game. At the first step, I knew what was coming, and there were always 2 more events to follow. It is very striking that every time I started to understand the pattern from the first moment, and started to predict it by saying it out loud, the pattern completed itself and then stopped. Looking back at things makes me realize that the hint had gotten through. Then a few years passed, and the pattern started again. It is also very striking that there are 3 events that behave as one. The first element is the warning, the second element is the true test, and the third element is the confirmation. The first event indicated that there would be a test, then I had to pass this test. In this test, my life, or anyone else's, was always hanging by a thread. It's truly a miracle I'm still alive. The third event was the confirmation, in that you saw this event coming far in advance. I can still remember my very first experience very well. First impressions are important, as they say. I was working at the post office at the time, and my job was to empty mailboxes. Before I left home, my mother shouted at me to be careful. Normally, she never said this. When I wanted to get into the car, I also got a warning feeling. Something inside me told me to be careful. Then it is 15 minutes later, and out of nowhere a truck arrives at full speed, which took the bend too wide, then forced me onto the side of the road, and I stopped at the edge of a ditch. This was the warning. Then it's half an hour later, and I go for my second round. I arrive at a mailbox, and I get a feeling that tells me I should put on my seatbelt. With my ADHD, I lost this thought after 2 seconds because I was distracted for a moment. Then I get into the car and I don't put on my seatbelt. I drive away quietly, and I arrive at a blind bend, and suddenly a car appears right in front of me. This person overtook the vehicle in front of him at more than 80 kilometers per hour in this blind bend. He managed to steer away at the very last moment, and I saw the passengers of the other car with their hands over their mouths in fright. The fact is, I should have come 1/10 of a second earlier or later, and I would have been dead from a head-on collision. I survived because I forgot to put on my seat belt. It would have been that extra second that killed me. Long live ADHD. I was furious, and I was able to turn my car around and chase this person and kick the shit out of him. However, I had a postal uniform on, and I could not do that on behalf of the company. I am seething with anger, and I drive to the next mailbox. After emptying, I drove quietly away and arrived at a road with an adjacent parking lot. I see a woman driving away from this area at full speed. I saw it coming well in advance and managed to stop my car. If I hadn't done this, that bitch would have rammed her car into my side at full throttle. You would expect someone to apologize, but instead she was angry with me. As you can see, there were 3 near misses, and all occurred in about an hour. Yet, this was not all. This pattern also appeared in other forms. The best example concerns 3 cars. The pattern has the following features. All 3 cars are completely identical to each other. They are from the same brand and from the same series. 2 of these cars are blue and 1 is red. The blue and red cars come from the right, and a single blue car comes from the left. This pattern also came back in my dreams. I mentioned the 3 dreams I had, which I wrote down. It was exactly 6 years later, down to the minute, that I would incorporate the stories into a text document. After analyzing those dreams, I once again saw this particular pattern. In my first dream, I encounter naked twins. They stood in a dark, flooded basement on a small concrete platform in the corner. The long black hair hung in front of their faces, and yet, I had the strong impression that they were very handsome. In the second dream, I meet the sister of a friend. In that dream, everything I touch breaks and everyone in my dream starts to hate me. His sister stood up for me, and in that dream she was also completely naked. In the third dream, I walk from the dunes to the beach, and it is characterized by orange sand. I am thirsty, and in the middle of the beach there is a tap from which I can drink. Then I walk to the sea, and I see an old classmate in the shape of triplets. 2 of her were topless, and 1 of them was wearing a bikini top. I am then faced with a choice, and without any doubt, I choose the bikini version, and that is where my dream ends. As you can see, there is a pattern in the form of naked women. The order is 2, 1, 3. It really does know how to get my attention. However, the question is, who or what does the bikini version represent? Is it the red car, or the single blue one, or maybe both? I'm clearly going for the exception. Germanic mythology. I got the 213 pattern I just described when I was at the age of 24, for the first time in my life, and at the age of 33, I never heard of it again. All this time I have endured everything, and have not asked any questions. For many years, I made several attempts to discover what the pattern refers to, but always without result. When I was 39 years old, I finally made the discovery I had been looking for all along. I came across it accidentally. After 15 years of searching, I finally found the answer. I was into ancient cultures, and I was interested in our Germanic ancestors and their vision of life. I was working on creation stories, and I came across the story of the 3 gods from Germanic mythology. Their names are Vili, Fe, and Odin. They are brothers, and they are equal as triplets. The story tells that there is a great void, which is then filled by the 3 gods. The god who initiated the simulation was Fe. Fe is known as a delusion, Vili and Odin are known as an ace. In short, we have 3 brothers who are completely identical to each other, and there are 2 different parties. It are 2 blue cars, the aces Vili and Odin, versus a red car, a delusion called Fe. By the way, the word delusion refers to illusion. Germanic mythology has indicated from moment number 1 that we live in an illusion/simulation. Odin and Vili rule over the afterlife, and Fe rules over this simulation. According to the story, it was Fe who first joined the void. Fe generated all matter. Everything about matter in this universe comes from this god. Yet, the gods were not at peace among themselves. There was a battle going on between Odin, humanity, and Fe, the animal instinct. To prevent further war, they decided to make an exchange between certain important figures. The god Vili, the blue car, entered the simulation and joined the red car. This has been a critical step. Fe is an energy that is completely devoted to the animal instinct, and Vili is a god who balances the animal instinct. Vili brought order into the chaos. You should see Vili as the chemist. He put matter together in such a way that a body was created. In addition to creating different types of life, Vili is the god who rules over the creation of life and evolution. Still, the body itself is nothing more than dead material. At the last step comes the god of the afterlife, and his name is Odin. He is the single blue car. It is Odin who gave permission to the soul to enter a body in order to enter into this simulation. So all three gods work together and complement each other. So it was all three gods, together, who made life possible within this simulation. Here is the pattern. All three gods are identical to each other. They're brothers. Two of them represent an ace and another the delusion. After the god exchange, this simulation is maintained by an ace, Vili, and a delusion, Fe. Odin represents the afterlife, or rather, the origin of the soul. It's a blue and a red car, versus a single blue car. The order is Vili, 2, Fe, 1, and Odin, 3. This refers to the polarity of the gods. Vili is neutral, Fe is negative, and Odin is positive. When the gods enter into contract with man, all three come together as one. It is better known as the Holy Trinity. So there is no single ruling power. Power is divided equally among the three gods, who always come as one, each with their own test and assignment. Everything good comes in steps of 3. By the way, the gods never spoke a word to me, nor did they give me any special superpowers. Everything went through pure symbolism. The gods have the power to take over an entire environment with the snap of their fingers. This is so very subtle that the people themselves never notice it. I also had to discover the answer to everything myself. The gods gave me the hints and knew that in the future I would crack the code. That is why it has been quiet for years. The message had gotten across and I paid close attention. I continued, despite everyone thinking I was crazy. Contact with the three gods can also occur through dreams. Each of them gave me a separate dream, with each their own message. The beginning of time. When I made my discovery of the gods, I immediately wondered if I could discover their identity. I started looking at several old sources, and very soon I would come across a familiar pattern. In this case, it appears that Fe represents the zodiac sign of Scorpio, Vili represents Libra, and Odin represents the serpent bearer. If I put everything in numerological order, I arrive at a 7-8-9 combination. In short, the gods represent the last 3 steps in numerology. I am also familiar with the series of 147, 258, and 369, and decided to merge both patterns. When I had done this, it made me realize that I had dissected the body of the gods. The body of Vili consists of the zodiac signs: Aries, Cancer, Libra, Sagittarius, and Pisces. All constellations together represent the god Vili. The body of Fe consists of the constellations Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Capricorn. The body of Odin consists of Gemini, Virgo, the serpent bearer, and Aquarius. To understand everything, we have to go back to the god exchange and the origin story. What exactly has been extracted on an astrological level? Fe was the god who initiated the simulation. This god is purely about animal instincts. There were no rules and everything was raw and hard. The simulation was in a state of chaos, unable to accommodate life. There was no way for the soul to become one with this simulation. To solve this problem, Vili was sent out. He joined the simulation, and his goal was to bring balance and equilibrium. He created the final conditions of life. Vili is a god who controls animal instincts, in the extreme sense. The object, Libra, is the central element and is surrounded by animals. Fe and Vili go well together in that sense, because they both share the animal nature. Vili keeps Fe's behavior under control. This relationship can also be found in Odin, where the serpent bearer controls the Gemini. Vili then created with matter the first concept of the body, bacterium, which was suitable to carry a soul. Finally, there is Odin, he who gives permission to the soul to be part of the simulation or body. As God, Odin is purely dedicated to humanity. All the zodiac signs he represents are of the human type. Odin differs and seems to be unique, yet the gods have a mutual relationship. Vili and Fe both revolve around the animals. Vili is an air element, which is complemented by the elements of fire and water. If we put all 3 elements together, they form the element lightning. Odin and Vili are both lightning gods, also known as aces. Odin and Fe also have a relationship. Odin represents the serpent bearer, which consists of the constellations of Scorpio and Sagittarius. Sagittarius is part of Vili and Scorpio is part of Fe. Fe is all about chaos, and this also applies to thunder, which is part of Odin. Yet, this is not all. I came to the conclusion that the gods represent all constellations or, rather, universal energies. So we are surrounded by God's body, and we are all made in the image of the gods. We as humans also possess a trinity, called the sun, moon, and ascendant. I got rid of my depression because I finally honored the build of the gods. So what it means is that self-development and self-knowledge is the instrument that brings you closer to the gods, not religion. Therefore, the goal is to do justice to the gods as best as possible, by simply utilizing your zodiac signs to their fullest potential. This is the so-called key to happiness, which is different for everyone. Also realize that this story from Germanic mythology was chosen by the gods. This is the identity and the role they play. When I look at the general message of the gods, it seems there are certain demands that we in life must meet. The first point is that you must become familiar with the workings of the afterlife. You are not meant to get stuck, and you must realize that your actions have their consequences. You have to become aware, as it were, of what is to come. Please don't be the type who has been dead for years and thinks you're still alive because you don't recognize death. It is not the intention to linger in the temporary life you have led. The second message is that you must be familiar with yourself. The idea is that you learn to make your own choices consciously and be able to substantiate all these choices. So, in this case, everything revolves around spirituality. To get this started, use the basics of astrology, focusing on your sun, moon, and ascendant. You do not have to order a birth horoscope to obtain this information. Everything can be calculated and found for free on the internet. The third point is that the gods want us as humans to be aware of the simulation and its building blocks, and to benefit from it. Life is not only science, but also spirituality. Both together form the key. The mutual competition that exists has been created by people who have labeled themselves scientists. This conflict is nothing more than a human creation. In nature, both sciences go very well together. My weapon of choice. In my life, I have a very strong connection to the so-called trios politica. Everything revolves around the final judgment, and I have to achieve this by taking the initiative and forming my own judgment. I can't lean on others. For example, my planets are only distributed among the zodiac signs of Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. I'm a judge of sorts, which means my judgment in this book matters. The order of the trios politica is 2-1-3 and goes as follows. 8. Scorpio is the zodiac sign that collects information and sees through manipulative behavior with a sharp eye. It is, in a sense, a negative energy because it does not trust everyone. This information is then passed on to Libra. 7. Libra represents a neutral energy. It hates conflict. Libra weighs the good versus the bad. The Libra then transfers this information over to the serpent bearer. 9. The serpent bearer stands for knowledge and wisdom and determines what the punishment or reward will be, based on the information of Libra. The serpent bearer is completely focused on conflict and makes decisions very quickly. This sign is positive because everyone gets what he or she deserves. In short, I have the ability to collect facts, analyze and weigh them, and then make a worthy final judgment. However, I have noticed that it is essential that I have the right and correct information before I form a final judgment. I am also dependent on the knowledge that is available today. I want to see things from all sides, the positive and the negative, and then create a worthy judgment. When it comes to that, I am a true realist. I will always continue to strive to find the ultimate truth.